She can, she can only Zoom.
Okay.
So she wouldn't be able to use the phone.
All right.
Now it's recording now.
Hi.
Did you push record to the
All right, so
cloud?
with
I
masks
didn't, but
on.
somebody did.
That's Eddie.
Kathy.
I'm
That's
trying to
Kathy.
see.
Hi,
And
Jay.
this is what I'm
Kathy's
trying to
my
do
phone
here.
partner.
Jay.
Jay.
Paula.
Hi, Paula. Hi, Jay.
And then these are grandkids.
Katie. Oh, the grandkids. Hi, great grands.
And great grandkids.
No, it's everybody.
Hi.
There's also
Karen is in
Yeah, I
Colorado,
see that.
so she's
She'll
gonna
be
be
Zooming,
Okay.
and then Emily and
Also,
Miranda. One's in
Our
Kansas
picture
and
is
one's
the little
in Atlanta.
tiny one in the corner. How do I make it big again?
And then
Okay.
I also, she has brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws that are going to be Zooming.
Going to the left.
So Emily now knows, because I just want to make sure, because the last text I had with Emily, she was going to, I was asking her if she was going to call, and I would put the phone there.
There we go. Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you.
Just let's make sure. And then what I'll do.
All right. So very good. So now I'm on
We
the
are
screen.
recording to the cloud.
Okay.
So it's being recorded.
People who aren't on now want to.
And then it'll then be from the cloud. We're going to take it and put it on YouTube. We have our own channel.
Okay.
So you'll have that also.
I was going to say, Katie, if you want to pull the Zoom up with Emily on it. I'm asking her right now if that works easier.
Because when it's time for her to speak, if she wants, she can call your phone, you could put it on speaker. And
You can put her. You can
I
put
just
her
want
phone
to
right next to the
whichever,
microphone.
yeah,
Okay.
which we've done before now.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
great grandchildren, you never
Oh,
used
yeah.
to have this issue before cell phones. Did you know that? They didn't.
And they're much more tech savvy than.
Oh, I
than
know.
the
It's hard to
adults,
even think about what it was like before. But, so Emily, we're just waiting to find out what Emily's going to be doing.
Katie, you could call her. She's been texting me, so I know, but this way we could get her quicker because they're ready to start.
Okay, we're okay. We're good. We're good. So I'm going to ask Jay and
Eddie.
Eddie to please rise. And is Karen on here too?
Karen should be on there.
So Karen, if you can hear me, I'm going to tear the ribbons that your brother is wearing. Both your brothers are wearing ribbons. We're going to tear the ribbons. And while you may not have that ribbon with you, know that we're keeping you in our hearts as we do this. So I'm going to go over to your brothers now and take care of this.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to do, I'll tell you what, if you could come a little bit closer. You okay being?
He's the one that isn't wanting to be close.
Oh, wait, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You stay right there. You come right over here. And repeat after me, guys. Baruch atah Adonai. Eloheinu melech haolam. Dayan ha'emet. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, the righteous one. Hang on, that's it. I'll get you out of the side. Okay. What's the word then?
She's always trying to come around. She said, what's better for you?
I'll tell you what, tell her we're just going to keep it relaxed. We'll try it this way, and if that works, great. And if it doesn't work, we'll call her. We'll take a
Yeah,
few
just
seconds.
okay.
It's okay.
Fine.
All right, is everybody ready to begin then?
Sure. You ready?
Mismor David, Adonai Roi, lo echsar. Binot Shayar Bitzain Yalme Menuchot Yanachaleini, Nahashi Shovei, Yanachini v'magle tzadek, Lema'an Shemo, Gam ki helech b'gitzal mavet, Lo yirai ki ata imati, Shiftecha u'mishantecha, Hema yenachamoni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged surirai. Tishanta b'shamen roshi, kusiri bayar. Ach tov v'chesed yedifuni, כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Friends, I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. As we gather together to find comfort and a sense of peace, we often turn to the psalmist. And so I ask you to join me as we say together, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is a part of us as we remember Shirley Cheyfitz. To her children, to Karen and Eddie and Jay, also to Scott, Kathy, and Paula, and to her grandchildren, Katie and Brian, Emily, Miranda and James, and to her great-grandchildren, Andrew, Autumn, Marin, Cody, Imana, and Cyrus. Also today in our hearts, we all join together in remembering Shirley's grandson, Andy, of blessed memory. To all the members of the family and to so many dear friends, whether here in person, and to all of you who join us through technology, and to those who were unable to join us either in person or through technology. We are together as one today, not only to remember, but to also celebrate the life of your beloved Shirley. We've been taught that birth is a tradition, birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Shirley's journey of 86 years began right here in Cleveland. She was born on January 16th, 1934, to Anne and Maury Smith. Shirley, along with her younger sister Barbara, of blessed memory, grew up in a duplex in the Cleveland neighborhood, simply known as Kinsman. Their father, Maury, was a milkman who delivered his products by horse-drawn carriage. And their mother, Ann, was a homemaker who also worked as a phone operator. While Shirley and Barbara engaged in their share of sibling rivalry in their youth and teens, as adults they grew to be very close and the best of friends. Shirley attended John Adams High School, where she enjoyed a marvelous group of trusted friends, and many of these friends grew to be lifelong friends, friends that stayed with her throughout the many decades. Following her high school graduation in 1949, Shirley went on to attend The Ohio State University for 1 year, where she studied political science. And she was also active in her sorority, along with her best friend, Sis. Now, here's what happened next in the story of Shirley. In her own words, you see, this is how Shirley described it to me at the time of the passing of her beloved Chuck in November of 2012. Shirley shared the following information. She said that she and Chuck were fixed up on a blind date by friends in 1951. And on that evening, there was a tremendous snowstorm. Chuck met Shirley Smith on a double date. Although Chuck was older than Shirley, they had a commonality, and that was the neighborhood where they grew up. Both the Cheyfitz and Smith families lived in the Kinsman area, Shirley growing up on 105th and Chuck on 117th Street. And when I asked Shirley what she thought of Chuck when she first met him, she said, he was a good-looking guy. And then she described him to me as someone who was, I'm quoting her now, she said, a little fast, but very respectful. She took notice, though, of Chuck and the gentleman that he was, not just on that first date, but always. The way he would open the doors for her, for anyone. And even though he did not have a car during the early years of their courtship, they would often ride the streetcars together. She noticed when they rode the streetcars that Chuck would always stand and give his seat to an elderly person, or a pregnant woman, or any woman for that matter. And Shirley told me at the time that this was something that really impressed her. Shirley described her beloved as generous. Generous at home with family, and generous in the workplace with his fellow employees. They married on May 3rd in 1953, and in their 60-year marriage, nearly 60 years, they were quite a team. And for them, the center of this team was always you, always family. In speaking with Shirley's children the other day, yesterday, we spoke, Karen, Eddie, Jay, and this is what I gleaned from the three of you. You described your mom as a woman who was loving, and you knew that she loved each of you dearly. You described a mother who created for you a warm and loving home. And Jay, when we spoke on the phone, you summed it up very simply, but so perfectly, just saying, I loved my mother. Not only did you love her, but she loved you, and she appreciated the ways that you showed your love. I know that there were times, Jay, when you would send workers to her home, her condo. And usually you'd send them over there unannounced, but you made sure, Jay, when she needed something to be fixed, you sent the right person and the repair was made. She loved when you did that. And Paula, all those flowers, the flowers you planted, the landscaping, she treasured your skills, your artistic eye, and she was so grateful for all you did to help make her home so beautiful. And Eddie, you remember a mom, as does your brother and sister, and probably all the grandchildren, but you remember a mom who never threw anything out. Rather, she would know who the right person was to inherit something that she no longer had any use for. Eddie, you described her as the coupon clipping, article snipping mom and grandmother. You shared that your mom would clip all these items from newspapers and magazines, and she'd make sure to mail them to the family the family member that she felt was the most appropriate recipient. I think in her own way, given all the talk that we're hearing now about the U.S. Postal Service, I think in her own way, it was Shirley who kept that business running. Eddie, you and Kathy, you enjoyed many trips with your parents, with Chuck and Shirley. And whether it was time spent at Lake Mohawk when you talked your mom into getting on the new jet ski, which was not supposed to tip over, and it did, and your mom wasn't a swimmer. Whether it was that, or perhaps the cruises, or the road trips that you took with your children to the Smoky Mountains, all of these moments and so many more provided the greatest memories for you and for your family. And Karen, in listening to your stories, I felt as if your mom spent the past decade or so making sure every time you, or maybe you and Scott together would visit her, she could never let you leave her home empty-handed. Whether it was the necklace that she received at her confirmation, her gold earrings, her wedding band, these precious items and so much more were carefully distributed to you, to your brothers, to the grandchildren. It's as if she knew that one day she wouldn't be here, and she wanted to make sure everybody had something. It was her wish, her strong desire that special items stay with the family. It was also your mom's wish, Karen, that certain helpful hints get to the right people. Your mom prided herself in collecting pieces of information, articles that she thought were important for you, or for your brothers, or for the grandchildren. She wanted you to have these pieces of information, whether you wanted them or not. Like the articles she sent you recently on all the varied ways of cleaning, all those household tips. I think she said when you're done with them, you should pass them on to Emily. Karen, you and your brothers recall a mom who took great joy and pride in preparing the meal. She loved when she knew the whole family would be coming over. She made such an event out of just setting the table for all of you and cooking for you. She loved the large family gatherings, the holidays, the celebrations. Throughout the years, she loved making these meals, creating the memories, and you loved her and her brisket. It was the best. Jay and Eddie and Karen, also along with Paula and Kathy and Scott, you knew a mom and a mother-in-law who was kind and generous and fun, and one who always gave from her heart. You knew a mom who, if you, or anyone else for that matter, happened to be in her home and saw an item, something maybe sitting on a shelf or hanging in a closet, if you said, "Oh, that's nice. I really like that. That's really nice." That's all. She couldn't keep it. She had to give it to you. No questions asked. Of course, that wasn't your intention. Maybe it was, but she made sure you had it. She was a mom who was a whiz at the sewing machine. She could repair or hem anything that needed to be fixing before any time had passed. And she was a mom and a grandmother who loved sending all of you cards and packages. And speaking of those packages, Shirley was perhaps the queen of duct tape. Whether you called her Grandma Shirley or Grandma Bagel, her grandchildren knew that she was a loving woman who wanted her grandchildren to always feel safe and secure. She wanted to ensure that you, her grandkids, were having a good time in every moment. She was generous and giving, and she made it a point to be interested in the things that interested you. And in her role as the ultimate card mailer and package sender, when items maybe did not arrive on time, and she sent them out with plenty of time to spare, but it really crushed her if something didn't get to you on time. Katie, you brought up a sweet memory, a memory that illustrates her love of family as well as her lovable sense of humor. Katie remembered a story when it was one of those big family vacations. This one happened to be to Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. Everyone was going to be there, but the family told Grandma Shirley that Andy couldn't make it due to baseball practice. And she was so angry. She couldn't believe that a family vacation had to have everybody in the family. How could he miss this? And with the whole family gathered, perhaps in the hotel room, your grandmother gave everyone a lesson as to why family vacations are for the whole family. And as she was going off in this direction, she didn't know that Andy was hiding under several pillows and blankets, listening to her. And when she left the room, Andy jumped out of the bed, ran down the hallway after her, and Grandma Shirley was absolutely delighted, laughing and giggling as much as everyone else who was in on the prank. I think that she was a good sport. Nothing gave her more joy, more nachas, than her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. In recalling Shirley's career over the years, she worked at Skull's men's clothing store. She worked at the May Company as a bookkeeper. And finally, the job she truly loved. She worked as a copy editor and proofreader for the Sun newspaper. Shirley worked there at the paper for 25 years, retiring in 2009. And during her time there, she created some of her best friendships, lasting friendships. And many of these co-workers would enjoy her as she had them over for board game nights and New Year's Eve celebrations and so much more. Shirley Cheyfitz was a trusted friend to many. And whether you were friend or family, she was someone you could always rely on. She was a person who at the center of her universe was always you, her family. Now, today, something just a little bit perhaps unusual, but we're going to let Shirley, in a way, have the last word. Shirley took the time to write her own obituary notice. And I want to thank you, Kathy, for making sure I had a copy of this. I'm going to read most of it to you, not all of it. But you should also note this. Attached to her obituary that she wrote was a little note, a notepad that said remember at the top of the notepad, the word remember. And she wrote in her handwriting, please put this in the PD, the plain dealer, and in parentheses she wrote, can cut down, you can shorten it. But then she wrote, please put all of it in the Jewish news. Thank you. So she wanted to make sure the Jewish news had the full story. And I'm going to give you most of that full story. Shirley, in her own words, wrote that Shirley Rosalind Cheyfitz was born on January 16th, 1934, to Ann Rosen and Maurice Smith in Cleveland. Her family were longtime residents of the Kinsman area before moving to Cleveland Heights in 1951. She was confirmed by Rabbi Jack Herman at Silver's Temple. As a teenager, Shirley was active in Young Israel and was an avid Zionist all her life. She graduated from John Adams High School in January of 1952, receiving awards in typing and shorthand. She was co-chairman of the commencement committee and a member of several choral groups. I wonder if any of her great-grandchildren know what shorthand is. We'll discuss that later. As a high school student, she worked part-time after school as a stenographer at a law office in downtown Cleveland. She then majored in political science while attending Ohio State University for 1 year. Shirley and Charles Cheyfitz, a graduate of John Adams in June of 1949, were married in 1953 at Ansh Delicia Synagogue in Cleveland Heights. The couple lived in East Cleveland, Euclid, and then for 38 years in South Euclid, where they raised 3 children. They moved to Ethan's Greens in Twinsburg in 2000. Shirley continues to share. As a young mother, Shirley was active in all the children's schools, serving as chairman of several PTA committees. She was also secretary of the Anti-Defamation League of Greater Cleveland for several years. She worked part-time as a bookkeeper for the Pewter Mug, Skull's Menswear, and did payroll for the personnel department at the May Company, all at Cedar Center within walking distance of their home on Ellison Road in South Euclid. In 1984, she joined the staff as a receptionist clerk in the front office of Sun newspapers in Beechwood and then transferred into a new office in South Euclid. The son moved again back to a new Beechwood location where she was promoted as an assistant to the editor and retired in 2009 from the main office in Valley View after 25 years with the company. She had many interests and enjoyed many hobbies and activities such as old and foreign movies, crochet and hand sewing, Sudoku, cards, and board games. For many years, she hosted Trivial Pursuit team games with potluck dinners at her home with mostly former co-workers at Sun. She treasured her family and enjoyed celebrations with the 4 generations at special occasions and holidays. She loved her home and was always happy to be there, puttering with plants, inside and outdoors, moving furnishings around to get a better, cozier look, and mostly having friends and family join her. We are taught that words from the heart come directly to the heart. Well, Shirley has just shared words from her heart with all of us. I now want to invite her granddaughter, Emily, who has words from her heart to also share. So friends, if you would bear with me for one moment, I'm going to move the microphone closer to the camera where the Zoom is. Emily?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Emily. Go right ahead.
All right. It's such a challenging moment in our lives when all you want to do is be together and connect in person, but can't. I want to thank everyone for giving me space to try to share my thoughts virtually. There are so many things that I want to tell you about my grandmother. I want to tell you how much she worried about her letters and packages getting to us on time, you already know, and how many phone calls and emails were exchanged around when and whether or not they had arrived. I want to tell you about how many mail mishaps she and I have had anyway, even though she was so prepared and thorough with the things she sent. I want to tell you how carefully she saved everything she came across in hopes that she would have just the right thing that any one of us might need in any given moment. I want to tell you how many things I didn't need but took anyway because I liked watching her light up when I did. I want to tell you about how when my grandfather passed, she couldn't imagine her life without him. She didn't think that there would be much more she'd be able to experience. And still, she gave us 8 more years of memories and visits. In these last 8 years, she navigated many new skills, such as learning to put gas in her own car. My grandfather faithfully had done that for her through their entire marriage. But more importantly, she was able to live through so many more glorious family experiences. She met a new great-grandchild, celebrated a milestone family reunion in Denver, watched the Believe in Dreams organization grow and flourish. She enjoyed Paula as her temporary roommate and shopping buddy, and experienced many of her great-grandchildren's activities: Andrew's baseball, Autumn's gymnastics and basketball, Marin's dance and basketball, Cody's robotics competition and checkers challenges, and movies and games with Imana. I'm proud of her for managing these last few years without Pa and for soaking up as many opportunities to connect with us as she could. One of the things that I believe made my grandmother happiest was when she had a family get-together to look forward to. In fact, many of us often felt that the anticipation for her was sometimes the most exciting part. She would call multiple times to review the meal options, suggest activities, brainstorm games we could play, and solidify who would sleep where and in which bed. I'm told that when we were little and planning a trip to visit, she would wake up early and begin looking out the window in anticipation of our arrival, beginning first thing in the morning, even though we were a full day's drive away. It was never too early to start watching out. As an adult, I know the feeling. I remember big embraces upon arrival, followed by an insistence that we eat something, and then a nudge to hurry up and finish so that we could eat the next something. The visits were always a whirlwind, but the time spent getting ready for the visits was where the excitement was. And so, while it stinks that we are missing out on being together right now, perhaps it's perfect. We're forced to wait. We get to pick a time in the future and look forward to that moment. We get to plan and imagine all the things we will do, and of course, all the food we will eat. We get to sit in that space of excitement for quite some time, and in that way, we honor her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for those beautiful words. Friends, at this time, we will prepare now for the rites of burial.
Jay.
Okay. On the screen, a white box.
There's a white box.
Just a white box.
It says you signed in from another device. Messenger is now inactive.
Not sure what's here. I wanted to go up there and tap it, but I wasn't sure.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, the righteous judge. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. God is given, and now God has taken away. Still we bless the name of God. V'yoshev ha'afar al ha'aretz k'shehaya v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May the soul of Shirley Cheyfitz be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and send comfort, God, to those who mourn, and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. As you're able, I invite you to rise for the words of the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, shochen b'amramim. Hamsei menucha nechama pachat kanfech hashchina. V'malot kedushim utorim kezochar arakia masirei. Et nishmat yakirenu shel halcha le'olama began eden tehe menuchata. Anna b'harachamim astirecha v'se'eter knafecha le'alamin v'titzror b'tzrorachayim et nishmata. Adonai hu nechalata v'tanoach v'shalom. Amishkava v'nomar. Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Shirley Cheyfitz, who has gone now to her eternal home. We ask you, God, to remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that Shirley performed here in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. God is her portion. May she rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. In a moment, we will recite the words of the Kaddish. Following the recitation of the Kaddish, the family will have an opportunity to place earth on the casket. This is one of our oldest, dearest traditions. It reminds us that as we have come into this world with loving hands to guide us and to hold us and nurture us, When we exit from this world, it should not be done in the hands of strangers, but in the hands of those who knew us and who loved us. And so as the family who wishes to partake in this moment to place earth on the casket, I invite you to do so, but ask that you also might take a second handful of earth and place it on the casket for our loved ones, our family members and friends who are not able to be here in person with us. We now turn to the words of the Kaddish and we recite together. Yitzkadal v'yitzkadash shemei rabah, v'alma divra chirutei, v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye t'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shemei rabah mevarach leolam olamei omaya. Yitzbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da amiran v'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shalom araba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We pray that God, who makes peace in a high place, will send peace and comfort to you, the mourners, to Israel, and to all humankind. And to this we say, amen. Friends, this concludes our service this afternoon. Shirley's name will be read at the Temple Tifereth Israel beginning Friday evening for the next 4 Fridays when we say Kaddish. Everyone's invited to join our live stream of this service. For information on that, please contact me. But very simply, if you go to the website at ttti.org and click on live streaming to the chapel, our 6 o'clock Friday night service, you'll be able to worship with us and say Kaddish and hear Shirley's name read for 4 Fridays. We'll also be including her name this year as we read her name in the Yisker list on Yom Kippur afternoon. As you've come here in peace today, so may you go forth in peace. Now I'm going to invite anyone who wants to place earth to do so.
Girls, you do for Emily.